The mashed potatoes were getting cold. I watched the steam rise from the bowl in front of me, curling upward like ghosts, disappearing into the tension that had settled over our dining room. 23 people sat around my grandmother's extended table, forks frozen mid-air, conversations dying mid-sentence. My cousin Amy had been telling a story about her daughter's first soccer game. Now she sat perfectly still, her mouth slightly open, staring at me like I'd just confessed to murder. I said, my grandmother repeated, her voice trembling with barely contained rage, "Why is an elderly couple living in the $1 million vacation home I bought for you?" The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. I felt my face flush hot, then cold. My hands gripped the edge of the table, and for a moment, I couldn't remember how to breathe. 23 pairs of eyes locked onto me, waiting. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly, each second stretching into eternity. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. My brain was scrambling, trying to process the accusation, trying to make sense of words that felt like they belonged in someone else's life. $1 million vacation home? An elderly couple? What was she even talking about? "I have no idea what you're talking about," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. The words sounded weak even to my own ears. Pathetic. Like exactly what a guilty person would say when they'd been caught. I watched my grandmother's face turn a deeper shade of red, watched her hands shake as she gripped her wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. "Don't you dare lie to me," she hissed. "Don't you dare sit at my table, eat my food, and lie to my face." My Uncle Richard cleared his throat uncomfortably. My Aunt Susan stared down at her plate. My mother looked like she wanted to disappear through the floor. And my sister Emma sat perfectly still across from me, her face carefully neutral, her eyes fixed on something just over my left shoulder. Let me back up. Let me explain how we got here, because nothing about this makes sense without context. 6 months ago, I lost my job. Not because I was bad at it, not because I did anything wrong, but because the startup I worked for ran out of funding and laid off 60% of the staff in a single afternoon. One minute I was sending emails about quarterly projections, the next minute I was carrying a cardboard box of desk plants and framed photos to my car, trying not to cry in front of my former coworkers. The unemployment checks barely covered rent. I burned through my savings in 3 months. By August, I was sleeping on my friend Marcus's couch, sending out dozens of applications every week, getting rejection after rejection. By September, I was behind on my car payment. By October, I was rationing food and skipping meals. My family knew all of this. I hadn't wanted to tell them, hadn't wanted to admit failure, but my mother had figured it out when I kept making excuses not to meet for lunch, kept declining invitations to family dinners. She'd shown up at Marcus's apartment one evening with groceries and tears in her eyes, hugging me so tight I couldn't breathe. "Why didn't you tell me?" she'd whispered. "Why didn't you ask for help?" Because asking for help meant admitting I couldn't handle my own life. Because my sister Emma was thriving, closing $1 million real estate deals, posting pictures of her new Mercedes on Instagram, taking grandmother on weekend trips to wine country. Because I was the family disappointment, and I didn't need to make it more obvious than it already was. So no, I didn't own property. I didn't own anything except a 10-year-old Honda with a cracked windshield and a storage unit full of furniture I couldn't afford to keep. The idea that I owned $1 million vacation home was so absurd it would have been funny if my grandmother wasn't looking at me like I'd personally betrayed her. "Grandma," I said, my voice steadier now, "I promise you, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't own any property. I don't even have an apartment right now." "Oh, stop it," my Aunt Carol said from the far end of the table. "Just stop lying. We all know you've been playing the victim for months." Playing the victim? The words came out sharper than I intended. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I've been trying to get back on my feet. While secretly owning a vacation home, my Uncle Richard interrupted. "That you're renting out for income? Real classy, taking handouts while you're sitting on assets." "I'm not sitting on any assets." My voice rose, and I hated how desperate I sounded. "I don't know what you think I own, but I promise you. The property is in your name," my grandmother said coldly. "Tax documents. Legal paperwork. All of it has your name on it. I saw the documents myself. My stomach dropped. Documents? With my name on them? How was that even possible? That doesn't make sense, I said slowly. I never signed anything. I never bought property. Can I see these documents? Oh, now you want to see them? Emma spoke for the first time, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Now that you're caught, you want to play detective? I turned to look at my sister, really look at her. She sat with perfect posture, her designer blouse pressed and pristine, her makeup flawless even this late in the day. But something was off. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Her jaw was tight, her fingers drumming an anxious rhythm on the table. Emma, I said quietly, do you know something about this? Why would I know anything? She snapped, but her voice was too defensive, too quick. My grandmother stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I can't do this. I can't sit here and watch you lie. I thought you were struggling. I thought you needed help. I gave you money, paid your car insurance last month, and all this time you've been hiding assets from your own family. I'm not hiding anything. I stood too, my hands shaking. Please, just show me what you're talking about. Let me see these documents. You know what? My grandmother said, her voice breaking. I'm done. I'm going upstairs. When you're ready to tell the truth, come find me. She walked out of the dining room, her footsteps heavy on the stairs. The silence she left behind was suffocating. I looked around the table, at all these people I'd known my entire life, and saw only judgment and disgust staring back at me. I think you should leave, my Uncle Richard said quietly. But I didn't do anything. Just go, my mother said, and the defeat in her voice broke something inside me. She didn't believe me. My own mother didn't believe me. I grabbed my jacket from the coat rack, my hands fumbling with the zipper. As I headed for the door, I caught Emma's reflection in the hallway mirror. She was watching me, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear. Guilt. It was gone before I could name it. I drove back to Marcus's apartment in a daze, my mind racing. Property in my name. Legal documents. An elderly couple living there. None of it made any sense. I'd never bought property, never even looked at property. I could barely afford groceries. Marcus was on the couch playing video games when I walked in. He took one look at my face and paused the game. That bad? He asked. Worse. I collapsed into the chair across from him and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned with every word. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Dude, he finally said, that sounds like identity theft. The words hit me like ice water. Identity theft. Of course. How else could property be in my name without my knowledge? But who would? I started, then stopped. Who had access to my information? Who knew my social security number, my date of birth, my signature? Who had asked to borrow my driver's license last year for investment paperwork? Emma. My sister had asked to see my ID 6 months ago. She'd said she was setting up some kind of family trust, that she needed everyone's information for the legal documents. I'd been half asleep, exhausted from another failed job interview, and I'd handed it over without thinking twice. I need to check something, I said, grabbing my laptop. I pulled up my credit report, something I hadn't done in months. And there it was. A mortgage inquiry from 8 months ago. A line of credit opened in my name. A property purchase in Lake Tahoe, California. Oh my God, I whispered. Marcus leaned over to look at the screen. Is that real? I don't know. I didn't do any of this. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. I need to report this. I need to freeze my credit. You need a lawyer, Marcus said firmly. He was right. This was way beyond anything I could handle alone. But lawyers cost money, and I didn't have any. I barely had enough for next week's groceries. I know a guy, Marcus said, already pulling out his phone. My cousin works for a legal aid office. They help people who can't afford representation. Let me make a call. The next 3 days were a blur of phone calls and paperwork. Marcus's cousin connected me with a lawyer named Patricia Reeves, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who listened to my story with increasing anger on my behalf. "This is fraud," she said bluntly. "Someone forged your signature on legal documents to purchase property. That's a serious crime. Can we prove it wasn't me?" I asked. "We'll need to compare signatures, pull phone records, check IP addresses on digital documents. It'll take time, but yes, we can prove it." She paused. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" I told her about Emma. About the borrowed ID. About how she managed my grandmother's investments and had power of attorney for some of her financial decisions. Patricia's expression hardened. "Your sister has means and motive. And if your grandmother was the one funding this purchase, thinking she was buying property for you, then your sister may have been manipulating both of you." The pieces were falling into place, each one making me feel sicker. Emma had always been competitive, always needed to be the successful one, the favorite one. Had she really stolen my identity to make herself look generous? To make me look ungrateful? "What do I do now?" I asked. "We file a police report. We freeze your credit. We send cease and desist letters to anyone involved in this property transaction. And we gather evidence." Patricia leaned forward. "This is going to get messy. Your family will be involved. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my grandmother's face, twisted with betrayal. My mother's disappointment. The entire family turning against me over Thanksgiving dinner. "I don't have a choice," I said. "If I don't fight this, everyone will think I'm a liar and a thief." "Then we fight," Patricia said. Over the next week, we built our case quietly. Patricia subpoenaed documents from the property sale. We pulled records showing I was in job interviews on the day the purchase agreement was signed. We found digital footprints showing the documents had been prepared on Emma's computer, sent from Emma's email address. The evidence was damning. Emma had forged my signature. She'd used my identity to purchase property with money my grandmother had given her, telling grandmother it was a gift for me. Then Emma had rented the property to an elderly couple, pocketing the rental income herself while I struggled to afford food. My grandmother had found out about the rental situation by accident, seeing a property management statement that had been mailed to her house. That's what had triggered her Thanksgiving explosion. She'd thought I was hiding income from the family while pretending to be poor. "We need to present this evidence formally," Patricia said. "I suggest we do it in person, with your family present. They deserve to hear the truth directly." The thought made me want to throw up. Facing them all again, after the way they'd looked at me. But Patricia was right. If I wanted my name cleared, I needed to do this properly. We scheduled a meeting for the following Sunday. Patricia sent formal letters to my grandmother and parents, requesting their presence for urgent legal matters regarding property fraud. She didn't mention me specifically, didn't tell them what it was about. She just said it was important that everyone be there. I didn't sleep the night before. I kept imagining their faces, kept hearing my grandmother's accusations echoing in my head. Part of me wanted to run, to let Patricia handle everything while I hid. But another part of me, a stronger part, knew I needed to face them. I needed to watch them realize they'd been wrong about me. Sunday afternoon, I drove to my grandmother's house with Patricia. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. My heart hammered against my ribs. Marcus had offered to come for moral support, but I'd declined. This was something I needed to do alone. Well, not alone. I had Patricia, with her briefcase full of evidence and her unwavering confidence that we would win this. The cars in the driveway told me everyone was there. My parents. Emma. My Uncle Richard and Aunt Carol. All the people who'd watched me walk out of Thanksgiving dinner in disgrace. Patricia rang the doorbell. We waited in the cold November air, our breath-making clouds, until my mother opened the door. "What is this about?" she asked, looking between me and Patricia nervously. "Legal matters regarding your mother's property investments," Patricia said smoothly. "May we come in?" My mother stepped aside, and we entered the house that had once felt like home and now felt like walking into a courtroom. Everyone was gathered in the living room. They looked confused, wary. My grandmother sat in her usual chair, her face hard and closed. Emma sat on the couch, and when she saw me, all the color drained from her face. That's when I knew for certain. The guilt was written all over her. "Thank you all for coming," Patricia said, setting her briefcase on the coffee table. "I'm Patricia Reeves, and I represent your daughter and granddaughter." She gestured to me. "We're here regarding serious allegations of identity theft and fraud." "Identity theft?" my grandmother said sharply. "Is this about the property?" "Because we already know." "You know what someone told you," Patricia interrupted calmly. "You don't know the truth. And the truth is that your granddaughter," she looked at me, "never purchased any property. She never signed any documents. She never knew about any of this until you confronted her at Thanksgiving." "That's impossible," my Uncle Richard said. "The documents have her name." "Forged," Patricia said simply. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. "I have evidence here that proves conclusively that someone used your granddaughter's identity without her knowledge or consent to purchase property in Lake Tahoe, California." She spread the documents across the coffee table. Signature comparisons. Time-stamped photos proving I was elsewhere when documents were signed. Digital forensics showing the emails had come from someone else's computer. "Furthermore," Patricia continued, "we have evidence that the person who committed this fraud is someone in this room. Someone who had access to the necessary personal information. Someone who had the means and opportunity to execute this scheme." The room was dead silent. Everyone stared at the documents, then at me, then at each other. I could see confusion turning to understanding on my parents' faces. Emma stood abruptly. "I need some air," she said, her voice shaking. "Sit down, Emma," Patricia said, and there was steel in her voice. "We're not done." "I don't have to listen to this," Emma said, but she sat anyway, her hands trembling. Patricia pulled out another document. "This is an email from Emma Morrison to Lake Tahoe Property Management, dated 8 months ago. In it, she inquires about rental rates for a property at 847 Lakeview Drive. The property that is fraudulently registered in her sister's name." My grandmother's face had gone pale. "Emma, what is she talking about?" "I can explain," Emma started, but her voice cracked. "Can you explain why you forged your sister's signature?" Patricia asked. "Can you explain why you used money your grandmother gave you for a family investment to purchase property in your sister's name without her knowledge? Can you explain why you've been collecting rental income while your sister was homeless?" "I wasn't homeless," I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken since entering the house. "I was couchsurfing." "There's a difference." Everyone turned to look at me. My mother had tears streaming down her face. "Why?" my grandmother asked, but she was looking at Emma now, not me. "Why would you do this?" Emma's face crumpled. "I needed the money," she whispered. "My business was failing. I had debts. When you said you wanted to invest in property for the family, I thought I could make it work. I thought I could pay you back before anyone found out. By stealing my identity," I said, and the anger in my voice surprised even me. "By making me look like a liar in front of our entire family. By letting everyone think I was hiding money while I was struggling to eat." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," Emma said, tears running down her face. "I was going to tell you. I was going to fix it." "When?" I demanded. "After you destroyed my credit. After you ruined my relationship with our family. When exactly were you planning to fix this?" "That's enough," Patricia said quietly. "The police have been notified. The property will be transferred to the elderly couple currently living there, as they were deceived into this rental arrangement and have been exemplary tenants. Your grandmother's investment will be recovered through legal channels. And Emma will face charges for fraud and identity theft." Emma dissolved into sobs. My mother moved toward her, then stopped, looking at me, torn between her two daughters. "Go to her," I said tiredly. "I'm fine." But I wasn't fine. I was exhausted and hurt and angry and relieved all at once. I watched my sister cry, watched my perfect, successful sister fall apart, and I felt nothing but a hollow emptiness. My grandmother stood slowly and walked over to me. Up close, she looked old in a way I'd never noticed before. Fragile. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. I should have listened to you. I should have believed you. I wanted to say it was okay, wanted to make it easy for her. But it wasn't okay. Her accusation had cut deeper than any of them realized. You will believe me next time, I said instead. When I tell you something, you'll trust me. She nodded, tears on her wrinkled cheeks. I will. I promise. My father approached next, then my mother. They apologized, hugged me, told me how sorry they were. My uncle Richard looked ashamed. My aunt Carol wouldn't meet my eyes. And Emma just sat on the couch, crying into her hands while Patricia explained the legal consequences she was facing. The elderly couple from Lake Tahoe, it turned out, were a retired teacher and his wife who'd been promised they were in a legitimate rent-to-own situation. They'd paid faithfully every month, believing they were working toward owning their dream retirement home. When they learned they'd been part of a fraud scheme, they were devastated. Patricia worked out an arrangement where they would receive the property as part of the settlement, a small piece of justice in a messy situation. I left my grandmother's house that evening with Patricia, leaving behind a family in chaos. My mother called 3 times before I made it back to Marcus's apartment, apologizing, crying, begging me to come back so we could talk more. I didn't answer. I needed space to process everything, needed time to figure out what came next. Over the following weeks, things slowly shifted. Emma faced criminal charges and settled out of court with my grandmother, repaying the investment and covering the legal fees. She moved out of state, and we haven't spoken since. My grandmother set up a small trust fund for me as an apology, enough to cover rent and job search expenses until I got back on my feet. I found a new job in December, a better position than the one I'd lost. I moved into my own apartment in January, a tiny studio that was mine and mine alone. No couches, no uncertainty, just my own space. My relationship with my family improved gradually. My parents made an effort to check in regularly, to rebuild the trust that had been broken. My grandmother and I had lunch once a month, slowly relearning how to talk to each other. Some of the extended family apologized. Others just pretended Thanksgiving had never happened. I let them. I didn't need their apologies. I knew the truth, and that was enough. The experience changed me in ways I'm still understanding. It taught me that silence isn't weakness. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand still and let the truth catch up. I didn't clear my name by yelling, by defending myself desperately, by trying to convince people who'd already made up their minds. I cleared my name by gathering evidence, by building a case, by letting the facts speak louder than my protests ever could. On quiet evenings in my studio apartment, I sometimes think about that Thanksgiving dinner. About the moment my grandmother stood up and accused me, about the way everyone stared, about how small and powerless I felt. And then I think about the look on Emma's face when Patricia laid out all the evidence. The way the truth walked into that living room on its own, undeniable and absolute. I didn't need to shout. I just needed to wait for the truth to arrive. And when it did, it spoke louder than any of us ever could.